Doing well. How are you?
Really good, really good. We are doing well over here. And I'm holding your beautiful book up, Badass Black Girl. And thank you so much for letting me read it this week to our listeners. I mean, not the whole thing, but the excerpts that I chose.
Absolutely. The honor is mine.
Oh, well, it is truly a favorite of mine. And I love that these are quotes, questions, and affirmations for teens. So important. Um, I think teenage years for any ethnicity, religion, race, nationality are harrowing at best. And then you're speaking specifically to one of the most marginalized groups in our world, Black women. And so I love that this is just for them, right?
It was important for me to address them specifically because I remember growing up and not having much guidance when it came to books. I mean, there were great books out there, but I always felt that I wasn't the audience for those books. So
Yes.
it
Yeah.
was
It's
important
important
to
to see
tell them
yourself reflected back, right?
for sure.
And so one of the stories I read in today's reading is about your first time on a horse.
Mhm.
And can you tell me just a little bit about that story and why it was important for you to include it in this book?
Absolutely. I mean, there were so many lessons that day. The first one is the person managing the horse just assuming that I knew how to ride a horse. I never
Yes.
said I knew. I was a kid. I just wanted to be on the horse. And I guess I looked serious enough, like decided enough that they assumed that I knew what I was doing. And once I got onto the horse and the horse just started galloping around. I
Yeah.
had no idea what to do. It became, in that moment, a metaphor for what was going on in Haiti with me at the time. The fact that people were just assuming that, oh, well, kids are resilient, she's fine. So much was going on at home, so much was going on in the country, and people just assumed that I was doing well, but I wasn't. I mean,
Mm.
I had nightmares about some of the events that I witnessed over some of the stuff that was going on at home. And just like I felt out of control on that horse, I also felt that I had absolutely no control over what was going on in my life.
Yeah.
And going back to this idea of writing for a teenage audience, books made me feel like I had agency. When you read, you choose what you're reading, and it's all your imagination at work
Mhm.
because there are words on the page, but so much of what you're reading is what you imagine it to be, particularly for poetry and fiction, right?
Yes.
So this story was important for me to go through it, and it was also important to me to write about it because reading and writing were the tools that allowed me to get my agency.
Yes. Same for me. I completely understand that. Can you just tell me a little bit about what was going on in your country then in Haiti when when you wrote this or when you wrote at the time period that you wrote about?
Absolutely. So this piece takes place in the 90s. So I write a lot about the end of the 80s. I was still pretty young back then, but mostly the 90s because that's when I really came to age. I was a teenager just making sense of the world.
Mhm.
So it was after baby Doc Duvalier was gone and Father Aristide was the a president favored by the people. There was a lot of violence because of what had been going on before he came to power, but also around his election and later on during his stay at the National Palace. So it wasn't just a continuous wave of violence. It was like little eruptions here and there,
Yes. Yeah.
um, just loose ends that needed to be tied.
Mhm.
And well, history was just tying them up. So one time it was a shooting in the streets because the opposition and the power the power in the national palace
Mm,
were in an altercation. Some other
yeah.
time it was um the teachers were not um, going to school because the state hadn't paid them for like 6 months. And
Wow.
this led to other people protesting because life was unaffordable and the government didn't care. It was always little things that led to bigger things.
Yes.
And as a kid, you're staying home because there's violence in the street. Sometimes it's
Hmm.
justified violence. Sometimes you're not sure how it started. And the thing in Haiti, you listen to everything. Part of it is survival. You have to know what's going on, even if you're a kid. And part of it is a lot of parents assuming their kids are resilient and that
Mm,
it's okay for them to discuss politics and violence in front of them.
right.
So this story takes place around in that environment, around that time when we hadn't been to school for a while because there had been a shooting right outside the school on the street. And we had been sent home for a few days. Then we came back because that event at the school called Journée de Couleur. So we're not wearing uniforms that day. It's exciting. There's a horse that got brought in. Um, I mean, uh, it's like it's really festive, and
Yeah.
it's as if nothing happened the week
Right.
before.
It's like a break from the reality, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then being on that horse and losing control, and the horse goes all through the school, um, put me right back into another incident, the incident that happened a week before, maybe a couple of weeks before, where they started shooting outside the school, and I was hiding under a desk with one
Yes.
of the nuns. So it was this weird moment where everything just flashes back.
Mm. Well, you describe it so well. And for those of you who might have missed your Only One in the Room episode, we dropped it earlier this season. You were the only one who accidentally saw a man burned alive. Beautiful episode. You tell that story beautifully, and you talk so well about your experience and your love for your country and your love for the country where you live now, and just just the idea of giving a voice to a voiceless mass, like not a mass, but a voice to a group of people who don't have the strongest voice here in America.
Right.
And we so appreciate that. And thank you so much for this. I hope you've written how many books?
Um, I'm losing track. I mean, I started my career in Haiti, so
Yeah.
I have about 9 books in French, but then I moved to the US, and I'm losing track. I'm writing a lot. It's a mission. I'm on a
Yes,
mission to leave a mark, to
yes, you
just be
are.
there for young girls. And parents have been asking me about what about our boys? Because I'm a teacher and I have taught so many different people, and
Yes.
I'm working right now on a series for a Black young man. So
Uh-huh.
I'm really writing all the time and just sharing my experience and hoping to be able to help people the way that I wanted to be helped when I was a teenager.
Great, great. And so this book, Badass Black Girl, I think would make a really good holiday present for whoever you have in your life who needs to see themselves reflected back in a book that was written for them. So you will find the link to everything MJ Fiêrve in the show notes of this episode. Please listen to the On My Nightstand and check her out. Okay. And thank you, MJ.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Dear Badass Black Girl, you are a true warrior who inherited the strength, courage, wisdom, love, and dignity of our ancestors. You stand on their shoulders, carrying a history of triumph. Yes, it is true. You also still carry some of the pain of yesterday's Black heroines. these creators, innovators, and agents of change. And you are faced with the tremendous struggle of the modern girl of color. But make no mistake, you are strong, and you can conquer whatever challenges this world hands you. Your very existence defies history. Never forget those who broke the unjust rules society once used to limit their progress. Those who fought hard to get you to this moment. Those who gave light so that others could find their way through dark times. Because of them, you get to walk into a restaurant through the front door, sit at the front of the bus, and cast a vote for leaders who represent your ideals. Walk in the freedom they secured for your sake. Be proud of your rich skin, and may your hair be a crown that stands tall. Be proud of your deep-rooted cultures. Be proud of the power of those who came before you, as the strength of generations will propel you forward and carry you through difficulties. Be fearless, but as you move through the world, remember your biggest responsibility is to remain thoughtful, to honor where you come from, and to recognize you didn't simply appear and find your own voice. Alice Walker wrote, "How simple a thing it seems to me that to know ourselves as we are, we must know our mother's names." Can be, which says parenthetically, be strong. MJ. Dear Badass Black Girl, as a teenage girl, I was curious about everything, people, events, ideas, and I was eager to try new things, even if I didn't know what the heck I was doing. The nuns at my high school in Haiti once organized a spectacular fair, a blur of colors, smells, and sounds. The sky was full of bobbing balloons which danced around under sunbeams poking through the clouds. Under a flamboyant tree, the hot dog lady covered sausages with mustard, onions, pickles, tomato catsup, and hot picklets, a Haitian condiment made from cabbage and hot peppers. Students wearing dark blue uniforms and white ribbons spent their pennies and dimes on popcorn, peanuts and homemade ice cream, hamburgers, and styrofoam cups filled with orange soda. They bought deep-fried foods, tickets to shows and athletic tournaments, and enjoyed rides and prizes. The PTA had arranged to bring a mare named Madam on school grounds, and I wanted to ride, although I'd never seen a real horse up close before. I gently approached the animal with her long, graceful neck, solid legs, hooves like buckets, and huge chest. Her skin was black, her tail and mane white, eyes dark and wide, and her coat was a bright copper. She had white markings on her face and legs. I watched the girl who sat in the middle and held the reins. It could be me up there. Madam arched her neck proudly and stepped daintily around the mud puddles, as if afraid of soiling her feet. The girl jumped off the horse, and it was my turn. Squeezing the last sip of orange soda from the straw, Bernard, Madam's trainer, asked me for the equivalent of $5 to let me ride. He wore a stylish hard hat, the kind made for riders, tight-fitting pants, boots, and a light vest. Madam seemed tense. She laid her ears back flat and squinted her eyes. Uncertain about getting on, I took the reins, reached up, and grasped the saddle's pommel. I wished I had a helmet, along with boots and long pants instead of shorts. My exposed skin would chafe from rubbing, but I wanted to get on the horse. Bernard cupped his hand so that he could boost me onto her wide back. As I mounted Madam, I accidentally kicked her in the flank. Startled, the horse leapt forward, nearly unseating me as she ran blindly into the trees. I tugged desperately at the reins as she settled into a lumbering gallop toward the chapel. It was a wild ride. Branches ripped past my face, nearly sweeping me off the animal's back. But somehow I held on to the horse as I tried to guide her. I was not big enough nor strong enough to force Madam to stop. It was a lonely experience. The animal's ribs pressed hard against my thighs. My heart pounded faster than the horse's hooves on the cement. I tried to regulate my breathing, tried to hold this engine underneath me at a steady pace. Bernard yelled, "Be in control!" In front of the school chapel, the horse stopped with a snort. Madam reared up and tried to turn around, first to the right and then to the left. But Bernard waited for her. His face melted into a shriveled scowl. The horse resisted and threw her head up, but I hung on, heart in my throat, whispering, "Gentle, gentle." Bernard calmed her down. I waited a moment, face flushed with heat. Sweat streaked across my face as the whites of my eyes, I imagined, were still bright with the excitement of the wild ride. During the ride home from the fair, sitting on the scratchy gray seats of my mother's car, looking down at the dirt-crusted tennis shoes, I recalled the ride on Madam, how I feared I'd be scraped off on a tree and fall winded and wounded onto the ground, waiting for someone, anyone, to come and rescue me. Under the animal's labored breathing, the thudding hooves, I'd realized that Bernard had assumed I was capable of riding, just like my mother had assumed I was strong enough to deal with the mad ride that was my life in Haiti, where there was political turmoil and danger. No one had bothered to get me a helmet.